Yeah, it looks too much like Los Angeles, and some parts of it. I like the western side. I don't like the eastern side where you get all these malls and that, but that's me, you know. But change is inevitable. As the bus driver says, change is inevitable. Even when I was here in '55, the old timers were. When I was first here for any length of time, it was 1955. The old timers were complaining about the way Albuquerque changed. You know, they were complaining then.
Changed in 1955.
Well, according to the old timers, it's just more people. Albuquerque was sort of like this big amoeba reaching out and absorbing all these towns like Trisco. And I don't think that Pajarito and Los Padillas have been absorbed. They're still sort of independent. They're just part of the county, I guess. But I mean, it's stuff like that, you know. Martinez town used to have just old adobe houses. The Spanish people spoke more Spanish. You heard much more Spanish from the younger people. Now you hear the older people speaking Spanish, but you don't hear the younger people speaking it as much. Or they may know a few words, a lot of Pachuco and Cholo type words, not any real proper Spanish so much. But when I was here, a lot of people still spoke, even in some of the little towns, they still spoke Spanish. And there were even people that didn't speak English that well that were natives, you know. Well, that's changed. I suppose that was inevitable. I don't think it's so much the educational system that did it as television. That's what I think did it. I don't think the educational system here is good enough to have, because I've talked to some of the older Spanish people and they told me they were punished for speaking Spanish when they went even to Catholic schools. The nuns would punish them if they caught them speaking Spanish. Yet in '55 they still persisted strongly in doing so. I think television's what did it, and more than anything else, homogenized, just like it has all over the country. I suppose the same thing happens up in other parts of down in Cajun country where they used to speak French. I suppose they're losing their French down there because of television, not because anybody told them not to or somebody said English only, you know. But I don't like that myself. I think losing a language is losing a nice piece of like a treasure, like a whole treasure. There's a whole different point of view that you lose. And telling people that they should learn English is all very well, but I'd sure as hell like to see them keep their own ways, too.
Did you grow up speaking Spanish?
No, I started learning a little bit of it amongst the Pachucos and some of the paisanos that I went to high school with in the old Albuquerque High for a while. I started learning it, and then I took it up. And I wanted to know another language anyway, and since I was in the Southwest, I thought, why not Spanish, you know? I lived among Italian people back east, so I was somewhat familiar with Romance languages in a way. I mean, I spoke a little bit of Italian, and having been Catholic, I naturally went to high school with Italians. So, you know, I sort of had a fondness for Latin languages. It's part of this country. Even wanted to be like old Loomis and maybe learn some Indian dialects, but never got around to it.
Old who?
Old Loomis, Charles Loomis, the one who wrote, the one that founded the Museum of the Southwest in Los Angeles. You know, the Indian Museum. And he was a strange sort of bohemian that wandered around the country on foot, you know, outsider, reporter, bit of a gadfly. He also wrote about the changes that were taking place then. I remember one chapter in his book, Lo, who is not poor, about I think it was about the Isleta Indians and how they were being forced to wear poorer clothing than the clothing they manufactured themselves on their own looms, and forced to wear, the men were forced to wear flannel shirts and dungarees, whereas actually the quality of the clothes, they were still making their own homemade clothing. And his whole point was that the Indians, especially the Pueblos, were not poor people. You know, they may not have had a lot of wealth, but they ate well and they had better clothes than when they were forced to stop wearing the clothing of their own culture. And well, things like that. You know, his whole point was they were be forced to become sort of homogenized, part of the homogenized milk, you know. And that's that. You know. The buildings are all gone. I even tried to find the old street I used to live on up in Alameda, and I think I found it, but it doesn't even resemble anything like what it was originally just a collection of small adobe houses, dead end, and there was a irrigation ditch at the end where we used to go and catch horny toads and keep them for a while, feed them some insects, and then we take them back to the ditch and turn them loose because we just sort of like to look at them. We didn't do much with them, but it was just sort of like, kids catching tadpoles, things like that in some parts of the country. Around here we used to catch horny toads down by the irrigation ditch, and always remember that. And that was when I was living here when I was a kid, practically. Off and on I lived here different times in my life. And now I'm back here again. Anyway, I got some beans on the cooking over here. I better go check on them. Oh, it was called Pat's Cafe. We never changed the name, and we didn't last too long. My mother and I ran it. It was my first job as a fry cook. And
When was that?
oh, that was way back in the 50s when there was no Highway 40. It was a little old square adobe place that somebody had built, and in the back they had an old 1930s style tar paper and wood trailer, and I slept in the back and woke up in the morning, opened it up, and also used to go down to a butcher's. There was a slaughterhouse down here on Coors. I guess it's long gone, but I remember coming to the slaughterhouse and picking up hamburger and steaks and things like that for the cafe. The Pat's Cafe, as I recall, was right by an old country and western bar called the Chesterfield, and